Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. On this auspicious occasion, wish you all a happy and a prosperous Eid. Eid is also a day of thanking God for all the love that He has bestowed on us. In these testing times, let's pray that He gives us more strength to overcome this pandemic issue. For those celebrating this festival, Eid Mubarak and have a blessed Eid. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says Flight and Health Curbs Cloud Airline Operations. Domestic flights were suspended from operations due to COVID 19, and now they are set to resume their operations from today. And the Ministry of Home Affairs has requested all these flyers to strictly follow the guidelines. These guidelines can be divided into two parts. One is for the domestic travelers, the other is for the international travelers. What are the important guidelines that domestic travelers will have to follow? Who are these domestic travelers? All those people who are moving interstate from one state to another within the boundaries of India are the domestic travelers. Who are the international travelers? Those people who are coming from another country to India are called as international travelers. First, let us look at the domestic traveler guidelines. This can be segmented into three parts. One is asymptomatic people, then symptomatic people, and then those people who have mild symptoms. Let's say there are people who are moving from one region to another within the boundaries of India. Those people who are asymptomatic, which means they do not have any signs of COVID 19. Such people will be permitted to go from one state to another, but on a condition that they can go to their homes and stick to their homes for about 14 days. And in these 14 days, they will have to see how their health progresses. In case they have any of the issues, any of the symptoms of COVID 19, they immediately will have to report to the health centers. This is what happens with respect to the asymptomatic people. They would be able to go home, but they will have to look at all the health issues during this particular period. Then we have the symptomatic people. These people have some symptoms of the COVID 19. The minute they are identified, they will be immediately taken to the nearest health facility, and all precautions will be taken, and they would be immediately admitted to the COVID health facility and managed according to the protocols set by the government. Then there are people who are suffering from mild symptoms. These people would be given an option that they will home quarantine themselves and be in complete isolation at their homes, or they will be isolated in COVID care center as appropriate and tested by the ICMR protocol. If these people are immediately tested positive, they will be shifted to the COVID health facility, and if it is negative, the passenger will be allowed to go to their homes, isolate himself or herself, and self monitor their health progress for about 7 days. So what would happen? They would be given an option either to stay at the hospital, that is the healthcare facility, or they may be asked to go back home and monitor their issue for about 7 days after the initial period. When it comes to the international arrivals, the guidelines are a bit different. How are they different? Before boarding, all the passengers need to agree to 7 days of paid institutional quarantine. They have to pay to the government for all their expenses, and this is followed by another 7 days of home isolation in case they are asymptomatic. Also remember, a copy of self-declaration form should be produced to all the officials when they are entering India, and home quarantine will be provided only to those people in exceptional scenarios. Who are these people? This will include people who are suffering from distress, pregnant women, death in the family. In case they have lost someone, those people would be able to home quarantine themselves. For all these people, strictly Arogya Setu app will have to be installed, and these people will be monitored. Along with this, in case there are people who are suffering from serious illness, or they will have to accompany their aged parents, and in case they have children who are less than 10 years of age, such people can home quarantine themselves. Kindly note, as we discussed, all these people will have to install Arogya Setu app so that they can be monitored continuously. It is this that is important from this article. There is another link article with respect to the same issue. It says that quarantine norms different across states. The COVID 19 operations had suspended the aircraft operations. Now that they have opened, the major concern that they are facing is with respect to different protocols followed by the state government. Rules which are present in Maharashtra may not be same as in Karnataka. The one which is present in Karnataka may not be same as that in Kerala. So there are different protocols, different guidelines and different set of rules and regulations that which is followed in different states. And as a result, these aircraft operators have no idea, lack of clarity among airliners about destinations that they would be able to connect, and at the same time the number of flights that they would be operate. They do not have any idea whether that particular airport is currently open and how many aircrafts can enter that specific region. It is this dilemma, this confusion that is still persisting among the operators who are operating these aircrafts. It is this that we have to understand with respect to these two issues. This article says danger in the air. Kindly remember, this article also has a link to the first article that we just discussed. What is the context? Pakistan International Airlines plane, which took off from Lahore, was supposed to land in Karachi. But the plane crashed recently, killing passengers and crew members. The focal point of our discussion will be on the safety of the passengers under this editorial. Due to COVID 19, airline operations were completely suspended. As this is gradually being lifted, one thing we have to focus on is about the maintenance of aircrafts. The airline operator's balance sheet is completely dried up. So, whatever happens, they will ensure that their operations are started off as soon as possible. They, now being given the option of flying the aircrafts, have to ensure safety as there could be some wear and tear and there could be issue of maintenance of the aircraft. So what should they do? They should first service it, test it, and only then initiate all the operations, as this is a question of life and death. There are no half measures that should be taken. Complete maintenance check, proficiency check in full flight simulator have to be stressed upon, and only then operated is the first key argument according to this article. The second argument put forward by this article is with respect to buildings and structures in and around the airports. Buildings are supposed to comply by the height norms near the airport. If owners, real estate operators, if they fail to meet these rules, it leads to violation of safety norms as they block the vision and it can be an obstacle for the pilots. If need be, demolition orders should be taken against those who have failed to comply and legal proceedings can be initiated for the safety of the passengers. In accordance with this, we have Ministry of Civil Aviation Height Restrictions for Safeguarding of Aircraft Operation Rules of 2015. According to this particular rule, any construction that comes within the 20-kilometer range of an airport has to obtain the no objection certificate. In case they do not obtain this no objection certificate from the Airports Authority of India, such buildings which are constructed can be demolished. So the two important issues discussed under this article, one is about servicing these aircraft before they are operated to ensure the safety of the passengers, and in case there are any buildings in and around airports which could be an obstacle for the pilot, such will have to be taken out immediately. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says aggressive PLA flouts protocols. India and China have a long history of border issues. This is also because of the colonial power and their footprint across India and China. There are some unresolved issues on the western sector as well as on the eastern sector. In the last 1 week, we have discussed about this particular issue. We have seen that there are some tussles and skirmishes between the Indian and the Chinese soldiers across the Ladakh sector. What are we focusing under this article? We will not be discussing in detail, but we will be focusing that the current standoff and recent incursions appear to be very different from something which has happened in the past. In the past, what we could see was whenever there is an issue, whenever there has been a tussle, whenever there has been a misunderstanding about the line of actual control between the Indian soldiers and with the Chinese soldiers, this would be immediately escalated to the higher authorities and this would be immediately settled by talks. There would be protocols, there would be 2005 agreement, and all that we had was this was not raised to a level of raising hands against each other. But in the present scenario, what we see is increased aggression from China, engaged in physical skirmishes, and have disregarded all the due protocols that were followed previously. Let's understand this one by one. When it comes to the aggression, what we have seen is that there is increased aggression by the Chinese soldiers. What has happened in the present scenario? There are about 17 Indian soldiers who were attacked by the Chinese soldiers, including some who had to be flown out for the treatment. Previously, this was not the case. The number of Chinese soldiers in the present scenario have increased. Usually what you have is the soldiers who are patrolling across the borders. You have the Indian patrolling soldiers, you also have the Chinese patrolling soldiers. This could be approximately about 2 to 3 dozen of people. But what we currently have, India, let's say, has about 20 soldiers or even 30 soldiers, but the Chinese soldiers number about 100, which means China has more number of soldiers in the present scenario than what India has. The third point of concern is all those areas which were previously uncontested. Let's take the example of Galwan River Valley. This area previously was uncontested. They had no issues in this particular area. The Chinese had completely believed that this was part of India and there was no issues with respect to this particular region. But now the Chinese have also started claiming some regions, some parts of this region as well. So those regions which were previously uncontested, there was no dispute. Such regions are also now coming under the dispute because of the Chinese. Now the question is, why have the Chinese become more aggressive and assertive in the present scenario? That is because of three reasons. One is because of the infrastructure development by India, which happens to be the most important point. We have the line of control. Then there are roads on either side of the line of Chinese side was built infrastructurally well developed. So in case they had any issues with India, they could immediately bring the soldiers because of the advanced level of road development. But the Indian side was rugged. It was not well built. We didn't have the necessary infrastructure. So what India had to do was to build this infrastructure and also create enough roads so that they would also be able to bring the soldiers in case of any tussle. But now, since India is developing this infrastructure project across the line of actual control, that is the primary reason Chinese have been opposing this. Their actions are also guided by concerns regarding the unilateral decision taken by India with respect to Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh as well. There is a disputed part in the northeastern side of Jammu and Kashmir, and that happens to be the region of Aksai Chin. Because India happened to take a unilateral decision which is a part of India, which India can take, but according to the Chinese, this we are not supposed to. China has a weird pattern. It wakes up every alternate day and believes, according to its historical data, that this particular part is a part of China historically. But this is not true. Aksai Chin and the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India, and this is contested. But according to India, this is an integral part of India which cannot be contested. That is why we are developing. But according to the Chinese, it is not the same. That is why they have increased the aggression in the present scenario. Followed by this, India has been building up its relationship with United States of America. China senses that this could be a strategic move by India, and as a result, what they have also done is indirectly hinted to India that you might be close to United States of America, but when it comes to the border issue, you have to deal with China, you have to deal with China, the assertive China. So it is also indirectly hinting that you should not be close to the United States of America. These are the primary reasons why China is flouting all those protocols that which has been previously established. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says helping removing quarantine stigma. There are people who are suffering from COVID-19 and there are people who are not infected by this. Those people who are not infected by this infection look at another person who has been infected with the mere eyes of suspicion. So this mere eyes of suspicion creates what is called as labeling, stereotyping, discrimination against the person who is infected by it and treating this person separately, and this ultimately leads to loss of status who has been a victim of this COVID-19. So what is stigma here? It is a prejudice against a person who has been suspected of COVID-19. So when you treat another person who is suspected to have COVID-19 is what is called a social stigma in the COVID-19 crisis. Why is COVID-19 causing so much of stigma? That is because people who have been not infected by this disease believe that those infected by this could directly infect them, and that is the primary reason they are labeling them, they are catcalling them, they are discriminating them so that they can keep such people away from them and such infected people do not come in the premise of such a person. What can stigma do? What will people going through this infection actually face? Stigma can drive people to hide the illness so that they can avoid discrimination. When constantly being labeled, when constantly being discriminated, such people will not even say the outside world that they have this particular infection. Why? Because they feel that they would be discriminated in the near future. This will ultimately prevent from seeking all the healthcare facilities by those people who currently have this illness, and as a result of this, this will discourage them from adopting the healthy behavior, and as a result, who are the major sufferers? The major sufferers are us. How? One is the person who is affected by this illness. He will be succumbed to the infection, and at the same time he is also going to harm other people as well, because COVID-19 is an infectious disease which spreads from one person to another. Because he hides his illness, this can also impact another person who is not infected by this disease. How to address this social stigma is most important of this particular article, and that is what this article speaks about. When we are speaking about social stigma, what we need to build is compassion and empathy towards the person who has been infected by it. So we need to build trust in the health services and advise showing some empathy for those who are affected, understanding the disease and adopting effective practical measures so that we can keep them as well as our loved ones away from this infectious disease. How do we overcome this? What is that we have to do in order to reduce the social stigma? We can start using words which are empathetic to the victim. Choice of words becomes very important when talking about the coronavirus disease. Certain words, language may have a negative meaning for people and also fuel stigmatizing attitudes. Let's say, for example, terms like infected, terms like carrier can be avoided, and we can use words like affected and acquired. The minute we start using such words, we are becoming empathetic towards the person who has been infected by this disease. Followed by this, we have the government, the citizens, the media, which happens to be fueling some of the issues. Key influencers and communities have an important role to play in preventing and stopping the stigma. What are some of the measures that we have to take? We have to engage the social influencers. Who are these social influencers? Let's say there is a particular community which has been infected, or let's say there is a particular region which has been infected, or let's say there is a particular tribe which has been infected. There are community heads, there are regional heads, there are tribal heads of that particular region. These people will have to be taken into confidence, and these religious heads, community heads, region heads and tribal heads who have to administer this particular talk to those people so that trust can be built upon. So engaging social influencers is the key important criteria. Followed by this, people also have close affiliation with the celebrities. So respected celebrities can also amplify the messages that can reduce the stigma. Followed by this, portraying different ethnic groups can also be an important parameter. How? You cannot concentrate on one particular particular community or one particular tribal group, but instead say to the people of India that different ethnic groups, different types of people are all infected by this COVID-19. By doing this, what we are also showcasing is that we are not targeting a particular region or a community, but we are being neutral in our perspective and don't suggest any particular group. Finally, we need to highlight stories of resilience and recovery. People who have been infected by this disease were part of the health system. They have now recovered and they have started off a new life altogether like they previously were. And kindly remember, this stigma can also be increased because of fake news, and this can also be increased because of insufficient data and information. So this will also have to be periodically given to the people such that the fake news and misinformation is not being spread within that region. It is this that we have to understand with respect to social stigma. In the present scenario, the peace committees in the state of Odisha have also been doing the same thing as we just discussed, is what this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says thousands rally in Hong Kong against law. Before we understand what this law is all about, let us understand the historical background. Hong Kong was handed back to China from the British control in the year 1997. Hong Kong, which happens to be a coastal city, was controlled by the British Empire. They believed in democratic principles, they had autonomy, and that was what was given to Hong Kong after 1997 under a single principle called as one country, two system principle. What is this one country, two system principle? According to it, Hong Kong will belong to China, so it is part of China, but they will have two systems. All those laws, all those regulations, that which is applicable in the mainland China will not be enforced in Hong Kong. There would be democratic principles which will be continuing even after the British Empire leaves the Hong Kong. Hong Kong was given autonomy under a particular law. This particular law is what is called as Basic Law. So what is this Basic Law? This Basic Law is something like a constitution that laid the rules for the Hong Kong, that laid the rules for how Hong Kong has to be governed. For instance, we have Article 18. What is this Article 18? These are the national laws which are listed in Annex 3. What is this Annex 3? This is basically telling that Hong Kong is part of China. So those issues with respect to foreign affairs, those issues with respect to defense, and those with reference to all those international relations will be handled by China. And at the same time, there is something called as Article 23. Under Article 23 of the Basic Law, the territory, that is the Hong Kong territory, can enact their own national security laws. So when it is to do with security, Hong Kong can come up with its own national security laws. So all those laws that are applicable in China will not be applicable with Hong Kong. What is the present context? The Chinese central government has come up with what is called as Hong Kong security law. But according to Article 23, the national security laws can be drafted and implemented by the Hong Kong authorities. But now what we have is the central government coming up and introducing a new law. People of Hong Kong are worried that China would set up its own institutions in Hong Kong responsible for security. So this could introduce new law enforcement agencies alongside the city's own national security acts as well. This is where this particular law that the Chinese central government has come up with has introduced new set of terms. What are these new set of terms? It says that in case there are people who are living in Hong Kong have plans of breaking away from the country, they engage themselves in secession activities, this will be considered as a criminal act. In case there is subversion, undermining the power or authority of the central government, that will also picture under the criminal act. Terrorist activities using violence and intimidation against the people of Hong Kong by the national authorities of Hong Kong can be treated as terrorist activities. And in case there are people who have a close cooperation with foreign forces and they happen to interfere in the administration of Hong Kong, such will also be treated as criminal acts. This is why people of Hong Kong are completely against this move of the Chinese central government. This law can be used as one of those tools to prosecute the dissidents, the activists, the human rights lawyers, in fact, the journalists who go against the central government. The opposition to this particular law is basically because this will take away all the rights, the liberties, the independence, the autonomy, that which is given to Hong Kong right now. And with the application of law, the central government of China can take away all these liberties, is what is being thought of by the Hong Kong people. That is why they are against this central law as perpetuated by the central government. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says failing to perform as a constitutional court. There are two issues surrounding COVID-19. One is the health issue leading to infection, and if individuals are not able to recover, few have kicked the bucket and passed away. Second is the economic crisis it has created. As economic activities have come to a standstill, industries are shut, real estate sector and construction sector are limping and crawling, failing to meet their own ends. Since these activities are suspended for an uncertain period, the major sufferers are the migrant workers. These sectors employ a lot of migrant workers. Now there is no work, employers are not generating revenue, no profit, which also means that these employers are not able to pay salary to the migrant workers. The migrant workers now have no work, no income, no basic necessities, no quality testing facilities, no protective gear to protect themselves, and no means to reach their homes back to their native state. All these rights have been violated of the migrant workers. The administrative machinery has failed to provide all the remedy to these migrant workers. Executive absence means that they have to knock the doors of Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the protector of the fundamental rights. In this whole issue, the right to live with dignity, which is ingrained in Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, has been violated. They were hungry, they had not eaten for days, people have kicked the bucket and lost their lives because of excessive traveling. And due care that was supposed to be provided was also disregarded, which means the right to health, which is again ingrained under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, has been ignored completely. The Supreme Court, being the guardian, the caretaker, the interpreter, the enforcer, did not acknowledge the fundamental rights of the migrant workers when they were in need of the support of the Supreme Court the most in this present scenario. Even during these testing times, emergency situation, the state, being a welfare state and bound by the principles of constitution, has to ensure constitutional propriety and respect the fundamental rights of the migrant workers. If these aspirations are not met, judiciary has to immediately step in and have a vigilant eyes on the executive and keep up to its role as a watchdog of the fundamental rights. Why did the Supreme Court fail? Where did the Supreme Court fail is the question of this article. The center issued the lockdown order. It asked the state to implement these lockdown orders. But who will compensate for the loss of the workers? This was a complete dilemma. There was a confusion between the central government and the state government, and there was no idea who would be compensating for the loss of the migrant workers. This is when the migrant workers started preparing to go back to their native states as they wanted to be with their near and dear ones. If they were traveling from one state to another, this is about interstate. When the interstate travel comes into picture, the major responsibility falls under the central government. Since there was lack of action from the central government with the state government, the Supreme Court could have immediately entered this particular area, enforced accountability of the central government, but the Supreme Court did not do that. It has also made questionable remarks as well. What are these questions? It said that this is a policy matter and the Supreme Court does not have to interfere when it is the government responsibility. They said it is a matter of policy and this will not require any judicial interference. How much can government do is another question asked by the Supreme Court. How can things be stopped is another weird argument put forward by the Supreme Court. Lawyers were not even allowed to take up the cause of the poor people. These reactions are not worthy for the Supreme Court, is the argument put forward by the author. Kindly note, all these issues have been seen in the past, and Supreme Court has stepped up to that particular scenario. Where some of the examples were when there was no law with respect to sexual harassment at workplace, the Supreme Court came up with a policy, introduced it, and asked the states to implement all these guidelines. Right to food was introduced by the Supreme Court. Right to environmental protection, this was introduced by the Supreme Court. So when in the previous instances the Supreme Court was able to step up its activities, why not do the same in the present scenario, is the argument put forward by the author. They were able to formulate, they were able to say the states, the central government to implement these parameters in the past, but in the present scenario they have failed to do so. But today the highest court believes that government is the best judge of the situation, which requires no judicial interference. In fact, the Chief Justice of India has even said that executive has control over 3 M's. What are these 3 M's? One is the money, the other is the material, and third is the members. What this means is the Supreme Court has listened to the words of the executive and has failed to enforce accountability on the executive. Under this particular pretext, the Supreme Court has time to discuss about high profile cases, but public interest litigations being filed to address the grievance of the poor, the downtrodden, and the vulnerable section are being ignored. Well, all this is happening where Supreme Court has been abdicating its responsibility. High courts have set an example by forcing the governments to act immediately. Karnataka High Court, Gujarat High Court, Madras High Court, Andhra Pradesh High Court, Telangana High Courts have asked questions about the migrant workers. Let's take the example of Madras High Court. There were media houses, press outlets which had written articles showing the flight of the migrant workers, but cases were filed against them calling as criminal defamation. Why? Because according to the government, these are fake news. This is where the Madras High Court steps in and it quashes all the criminal defamation cases against the media houses. The Telangana High Court also questioned the ignorance of the state government of Telangana. Why? Because they had filed one of the vague reports when questioned about the shelters for persons who were rendered homeless. Then we have the Gujarat High Court, which was inquiring and asking the state government about the steps taken for the migrant workers. This High Court also said that we, the High Court, will have a constant eye on the Gujarat government. We will not engage in the daily activities, we will not look at the daily interventions, but we as the High Court will have a supervisory eye on the state governments for all the steps that you, the state governments, have taken. Then what we have is the Karnataka High Court, which had also asked the government of Karnataka to pay for the expenses when these migrant workers were traveling from the state of Karnataka to their native states. While all these examples establish that high courts have played their role in enforcing accountability, the Supreme Court has failed to enforce the accountability with respect to the central executive, is what this article all about. Kindly note, there are few beautiful lines as given under this article. What are these lines? Experience should teach us to be most on our guard to protect liberty when the government's purposes are beneficent. The greatest danger to liberty lies in insidious encroachment by men of zeal, well-meaning but lacking in due deference for the rule of law. This was mentioned in ADM Jabalpur case by Justice H.R. Khanna, which was initially quoted by Justice Brandeis. Then we also have K.M. Munshi, who happens to be a member of Constituent Assembly, who cautioned if the fundamental rights are placed at the mercy of the Parliament, they would cease to be fundamental. Please use these quotations whenever you are writing an answer or when you are writing the essays. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Consider the following statements with respect to International Civil Aviation Organization. It is a specialized agency of United Nations. It has its headquarters at Montreal, Canada. Which of the above statements are correct? Both the statements are correct. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Kindly note, the International Civil Aviation Organization is a UN specialized agency established by states in 1944 to manage the administration governance of the Convention on International Civil Aviation, which is also called as Chicago Convention. This convention established rules of airspace, aircraft registration, and safety, details the rights of the signatories in relation to air travel. The ICAO works with the convention's 193 member states and industry groups to reach consensus on international civil aviation standards and recommended practices. So basically, this is about the safety of the international travel. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements with respect to Commission on the limits of continental shelf. It will facilitate the implementation of United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea in respect of establishment of outer limits of continental shelf beyond 200 nautical miles from the baselines from which breadth of the territorial sea is measured. Ministry of External Affairs is the nodal ministry of the government for the law of sea related issues. Which of the above statements are incorrect? Since it is asking for the incorrect statement, the answer to this is 2 only. Why? It is not the Ministry of External Affairs. Instead, it is the Ministry of Earth Sciences, which is the nodal ministry of the government for the law of sea related issues. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements with respect to the Nallamala forest. It is located in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. A large part of the forest is part of Nagarjuna Saga, Srisailam Tiger Reserve. Chenchus who live in these forests are a designated scheduled tribe in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana only. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why? Because Chenchus who happen to live in these forests are the designated scheduled tribes not only in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, but they are also the scheduled tribes in Karnataka and also Odisha as well. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are correctly matched? Dehing Patkai Elephant Reserve in Assam, Bhagwan Mahavir Wildlife Sanctuary in Goa, Gir National Park in Gujarat. The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. All the 3 are correctly matched. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. In India, markets in agricultural products are regulated by Agricultural Produce Markets Committee enacted by different states. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Kindly note, an elaborate analysis of APMC Act will be discussed on our economy this week. Now let's look into the mains practice question. COVID-19 stigma and discriminatory behavior are the 2 major impediments in controlling the virus outbreak. Discuss. Has the Supreme Court failed to meet its constitutional obligation as protector of fundamental rights and has turned blind eye to the problems of migrant workers amidst COVID-19 crisis? Justify your opinion. So please write all your answers on the comment section so that you guys can have a peer review and also come up with constructive criticism. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.